Very pleased to have on next a gentleman who we've had on the program several times before. He's a professor of economics at Loyola University in New Orleans. And he also is someone who's very provocative, let's just say, and is always interesting to have as a guest. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Walter Block joining us here in the Ringside program. Doctor, good morning.
Good morning, Jeff. It's good to be back with you.
Well, it's my pleasure to have you back on the program. So, Doctor, I'm sure you've been watching with interest the debate going on up in Washington between the Republicans and the Democrats concerning the economic recovery. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that the Republicrats and the Demopublicans, if I've said that correctly, there's not a dime's worth of difference between them. They're just caviling over marginalia. They're both Keynesians, and the differences between them are not that great. I'm more of a fan of Ron Paul, who is a much more radical politician, who rejects this bailout totally, not just based on, this or that, or, will the stimulus kick in today or will it kick in tomorrow, and should we, subsidize this special interest group or that special interest group? The Ron Paul or the libertarian or the free enterprise view would be that the whole thing is silly, that the problems were caused by government. The solution will be with less government, not more government.
And that's the view that I share, and I think at least a portion of the listeners of this program. Others believe that the stimulus plan will help Louisiana. They talk about the money that will help schools, the money that will go to coastal restoration, new levees. They say that if you love Louisiana, you have to vote for the stimulus bill because of all the money that's coming to our state. How do you respond?
Well, there are two economists, Frederick Bastiat and Henry Hazlitt, who mention this concept in economics called the seen, S-E-E-N, and the unseen. And yes, we look at the benefits, and Louisiana is up on the list of places to be subsidized. And that looks all well and good, and that's the seen. But what about the unseen? Where do we get the money for this? Well, one way we get the money for this bailout package or stimulus, so-called stimulus, is from other people. Now, I doubt that very much that all the taxes come from other 49 states and all the benefits come to Louisiana. That would be amazing, given that we're not that politically powerful.
Right.
I would imagine that probably more of the money comes from Louisiana than goes to Louisiana, so on net balance we're losers. But the point is, let's look at this from the perspective of the whole United States, not just from the more narrow perspective of Louisiana. Look, when you take money from people and you give it to other people, how do you help both of them? It seems to me that all you do is you hurt them because it costs a little bit of money to transfer the wealth from the first person to the second person. Or to put it in biblical terms, if you take money from Peter and give it to Paul, yes, Paul looks good, he's better off, but Peter is worse off. And what's the argument for saying that both together are better off?
But here's what they're doing, Doctor, and you know this well. I mean, they're not they're creating this money out of thin air, aren't they? I mean, they're printing this money.
Well, there are three ways that the government can raise money. One is through taxes, which we've just discussed. Second one is through borrowing, and they're not going to be able to borrow too much because their credit is running out with all these deficits. The third way is inflation. You're quite right. They need not take anything from Peter to give to Paul. They just print it up.
Right.
But they can't print up toys and food and shoes and burgers and pizza and wristwatches. They can't print that up. If they could, Zimbabwe would be the best economy in the world because the Zimbabwean way is to print up money like drunken sailors. No, what that causes is inflation. And worse, it messes up the interest rate, which messes up the allocation of resources, human and non-human resources in the economy. Look, the reason we're in the problem that we're now in, the recession, is because of past inflations. And if we have an inflation now in order to solve it, it's sort of like pouring gasoline on a fire in an attempt to, stop the fire.
And doesn't it also devalue the currency?
Oh, yes. Look, when I don't know how old you are, Jeff, but when I was a kid, you could buy a hot dog and a can of soda or a bottle of soda for 15 cents for both of them. Now, wow. 15 cents, you hardly want to stoop down if you see a dime and a nickel on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
No, the reason we have inflation, gigantic inflation, I think since the Fed started in 1913, 95 or 99% of the dollar in 1913 has been eroded, and now it costs $1 to buy, 5 cents or a penny? I forget what the exact amount is. No, the government has inflated the currency, has made it much less valuable, although compared to other countries, we're not doing all that badly. And worse, what they've done by increasing the money supply is lowered the interest rate artificially, which encourages investment in heavy industry, which cannot be sustained because the time preference or the impatience rates of the populace hasn't changed. And that's why we're having all this unemployment. That's why we're having closed factories and closed stores in the shopping malls and unemployment and stuff like that.
Dr. Block, we're going to take some calls in a minute and open up our phone lines. You can join the conversation, 661-2929 on the North Shore, 556-9696 on the South Shore. Joining us, Dr. Walter Block. He's at Loyola University, professor of economics. He's also known as an Austrian school economist and libertarian, someone who has strong views on a lot of these issues, and we always enjoy having him on the program. We're going to take a quick time out. We'll take care of some business, and we'll come back and take some phone calls. 661-2929 on the North Shore, 556-9696 on the South Shore. And when we come back, I want to get the doctor's view on not only these various plans and, where we go from here, but how in the world did we get into this incredible mess that we're in. Dr. Walter Block joining us, professor of economics at Loyola University, an Austrian school economist, libertarian, joining us to talk about how we got into this mess, where we go from here with this economy, the stimulus package, the debate raging, the concerns that a lot of people have about where we go. I had on an earlier guest, one of your colleagues at Loyola, Dr. Block, who talked about he would like to see a lot of these programs either privatized or eliminated, such as Social Security, such as Medicare, Medicaid. But then another caller said, well, what about the people struggling in the nursing homes that need these checks to survive? I mean, you can't just cut off the funding. You would throw these people out on the street. How do you respond?
Before I answer the question, if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to take a little roundabout because I'm a professor and I'm never supposed to answer direct questions. That's a joke, but not a very funny joke. But, if you're an economist, you can't tell real good ones. I just wanted to say that an Austrian economist has nothing to do with the economics of Austria. Rather, I follow a certain school of thought called praxeology, which is based on the teachings of people who just happen to come from Austria, such as Menger, Bomberwerk, Mises, and Hayek. A similar sort of a thing occurs with regard to the Chicago School. It has nothing to do with the economics of Chicago. It's just that the people who started it, Stigler and Milton Friedman and others, were all at the University of Chicago. Okay, now that I've got that out of the way, let me try to address the question you just asked.
Right.
Namely, Social Security, Medicare, welfare, things like that. If we just cut it off, don't we hurt the poor and leave them in the lurch?
Right.
Well, these programs didn't really start until the 1930s during the FDR administration. Before that, you didn't have old people and sick people, lying in the streets. These programs don't really help the people. Again, it's the seen and the unseen. You see the government giving people welfare or Social Security or retirement or unemployment insurance or what have you, but where do they get the money from? If they don't inflate the currency, then they take it from other people. Now, Adam Smith wrote this magnificent book. It was called The Wealth of Nations, and he asked the question, why is it that some nations are very rich and other nations are very poor? And he didn't say, and he's the father of economics, and he's certainly a person that I respect. He didn't say, well, the way to get rich is to have the government take money from some people and give it to other people. No. What he said was that the best way to get rich and end poverty or diminish poverty is by having free enterprise. And that, I think, is absolutely true. The government does so much to undermine the economy. It promotes unionism. It promotes inflation. It promotes all sorts of problems. The welfare system is credited, if you want to use that word, or debited, that would be a better word, for ruining the family. It used to be that most families were intact.
Good point.
Nowadays, there are some cities where 75% of the kids are from broken families. And one of the indices of poverty is broken family.
Now, I want to get to these calls in a second, but I'm looking here at a debate raging on the Senate, and you've got a Democrat who are looking at this big chart and saying all these billions are going to be spent in the stimulus plan are going to lead to all of these jobs, talking about infrastructure, all the billions going to infrastructure and all the jobs that it's going to create. And that's one of the arguments that they're using. This stimulus plan is going to create jobs. Will it really, Doctor?
Well, even if it would, we don't want jobs. Jobs are not the key. It's rather production. Look, we could create jobs. You know those trucks on the highway, the big 18-wheel trucks?
Yes.
Suppose we banned all those trucks, and instead of transporting stuff like that in those big trucks with one guy, we broke up the cargo of those trucks into 50-pound sacks. Now, one truck, I don't know how many 50-pound sacks it's got in it, say 1,000, just to take a number. So there's 1,000 jobs for every truck, and there are tens of thousands of trucks. So we could create jobs for an infinite number of people if we just got rid of those stupid trucks. Now, if we did that, all the people would have to do that. We'd have no doctors, no lawyers, no musicians, no farmers, nobody.
Right.
We'd have plenty of jobs. We'd have jobs out the wazoo, but we don't want jobs. Jobs are a pain in the neck. The only reason we have to have jobs is because we live in a scarcity. Jobs are bad. What we want is production. And if we could have production by pressing a button and none of us had jobs, we wouldn't have to work, that would be magnificent. So look, Keynes once said, if you get some people to dig ditches and other people to fill them up again, that would create jobs. He thought that was a good thing. I think it's idiotic, because what happens if you dig holes and fill them up again, or have people wasted on carrying 50-pound sacks all around, is you don't have production and we all die.
Well, Keynes is really the culprit for a lot of this, isn't he?
Oh, yes. Keynes is a bad guy.
Yeah, they really have bought into his philosophy.
And as for infrastructure, these highways, I'm coming out with a new book on roads. Do you know how many people die on our roads every year?
Thousands.
40,000. Mm-hmm. Well, some years it's 39, some years it's 41, but for the last 10, 15 years it's been around 40,000. They die on our infrastructure. Just to put this in perspective, you know how many people died in the post-Katrina due to FEMA and the Army Corps of Engineers?
Wasn't it about 3,000?
I think it was 1,500, but I might be wrong. I think 3,000 died in 9/11.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think about 4,000 or 4,500 U.S. servicemen have so far died in Iraq.
Right.
And I think maybe 50,000 U.S. soldiers died in Vietnam, but that was over 10 years, so that's like 5,000 a year. This is 40,000 a year. Why isn't Obama talking, or Bush, I'm not blaming Obama for this, why aren't we talking about 40,000 people dying? Now, this seems to be horrendous, and now we're going to give trillions, not billions, well, 1.0 trillion or 0.9 trillion, that is 900 billion, to infrastructure in order to create jobs?
Does the government have a role in fixing the roads and bridges?
No. We should privatize the roads and the bridges and the tunnels and the streets and all that, and then many fewer people will die. My estimate, based on God knows what, is that instead of 40,000 people, we might have 5,000 or 8,000 people dying on the highways under private enterprise.
It'd be much safer. All right, let's go to Richie. And Richie, you're on with Dr. Block.
Yeah, hey, everybody. Dr. Block, there was a guest on a moment earlier, one of my representatives, who, while I probably more agree with than not, but still I tried to get an answer from him in regard to our Federal Reserve System and wanting them off my neck and returning to Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. No state shall make anything but gold or silver a legal tender. And he gives me some platitude about gay marriage that, I'm supposed to think, oh, what a good conservative, and that's going to change my life.
Yeah.
What does the Constitution have to do with marriage at all? And how is it, if you would address Article 1, Section 10 of our Constitution, and how communist a Federal Reserve System is?
The Federal Reserve System is pure evil. It started in 1913, and if you look at the 100 years before 1913 and the roughly 100 years after 1913 until the present day, and you look at the number and severity of recessions and depressions, there was practically nothing before 1913. Oh, there was a depression here and there in 1907 or whatever, in 1890s, but they lasted for months, not years, and they were very, very mild compared to what happened after 1913. No, Ron Paul, another congressman, and I, and certainly all austro-libertarians, favor the gold standard and favor an eradication of the Federal Reserve System. That's just a horrible thing. Bernanke and Alan Greenspan deserve to, well, I wouldn't say deserve to be shot, but deserve something bad because they ruined the economy, and Bernanke is still ruining the economy. No, we should go back to 100% gold-backed dollar, no fractional reserve banking, no fiat currency. None of the
Some people have said, when I mentioned that to some economists, they say, oh, well, there's not enough gold to back the currency. You can't do that.
Well, then they probably got their PhDs with a box top. Because you don't need a lot of gold. Look, we're continually finding new supplies of gold, and if somehow we never discovered one more gold ounce, well, then the price of gold would rise, and maybe we'd go to silver or platinum or something. In other words, it's not really the gold standard that free enterprises favor. It's rather free market money, whatever the market decides.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we call it the gold standard is because whenever people were free to choose, they chose gold. So we favor the gold standard because it's really part of free enterprise money. Why should we have socialism or communism in the money industry, which, while given that money is a very integral part of the economy?
Doctor, we have about a minute left, and I'd like to get your analysis of what we're heading into here. How bad is this going to get?
It really depends upon what Barack Obama and his gang do. If they embrace laissez-faire capitalism, free enterprise, and reduce taxes and reduce government involvement, well, this recession will last a couple of months and we'll be fine. If he goes the FDR route, FDR kept that depression going from 1929 to 1946. If Obama does an FDR, if it's Franklin Delano Obama, we're going to have a horrible, long depression.
Well, we'll be following it closely and look forward to having your participation down the road again. Doctor, always very interesting, enlightening. Dr. Walter Block joining us of Loyola University.